Welcome to Small Potatoes,
where we give you a naughty tease of our latest Patreon episode.
Be sure to subscribe. Links are in the description. Well, we're finally diving into, what's taken us this long? We're diving into hand jobs. And let's face it, we are experts in this field. But it was a post we saw on Instagram from our friends from the Hard or Soft show. And they had a guest on. His name is Kenneth Play. And it was actually a fascinating interview. I am very much so a fan of Kenneth from this point on. But he spoke about hand jobs. So I want to watch the video with you guys, and then we can get into some discussion about it.
I love this. I agree. It was a great interview. He's very dynamic as a person, and found him really captivating in how he speaks. But as we know, Hard or Soft gets into the nitty gritty. So it's going to get a little vulgar. There might be some bleeping, but let's roll the video. We'll talk about it on the other side. Guys, get your hands ready.
Something that doesn't faze you anymore now that probably used to faze you before.
When I was a kid watching porn, you think fucking is the most, the best pleasure you could possibly have on your cock, and I don't know. Sometime ago, a hand job actually feel so much better from a master. You know what I mean? When I'm I am also, it's not very different than jerking off. You think about it, I'm controlling the rhythm and speed to create the sensation. It's very different when you lay back and you are relaxed and someone is creating some magical sensation on your when you are not moving.
Word,
I think it's so underrated. I think blowjob looks amazing, but a quality hand job mixed with some blowjob, from some of my pro friends, when they're skilled, it blows your mind. And then they also guide you do some breath work and all that stuff. So looks cool. I mean, not that it's not good. It's just different. But I think hand job is so underrated.
I love those guys, and I absolutely love Kenneth. But hand jobs, they are so underrated. I mean, it's our entire business. So, like I said, we are kind of experts in this art. So let's talk about hand jobs and how amazing they can be. And I think a lot of guys are missing out and only going for the big score and having sex or increasing their body count, when really you're missing out on amazing sensual experiences.
There were so many finer points that he made that really jumped out to me in that regard, because what he said about how either he's in control of the motion of the ocean or he's sitting back receiving, I think that is such a big difference. It's being serviced versus having to perform, that kind of vibe. And there is something a heightened kind of pleasure element to not being in control, and yet not in a submissive way, but just not being the one who's steering the engine kind of vibe. And if you just lay back and get a hand job, yeah, that's not your control at all. You're laid back in this guy, right? And so you get to experience all those sensations. And when you can give a really good hand job, he is so nail on the head when he describes it, because it's unmatched. There are certain things you can do with hands that a mouth can't do, that a vagina or a butt can't do. And there's a bit more play element to it. There is a lot more control in terms of timing. You can literally feel when someone's getting close and if you want to back off or not, how they react to certain things. If they like it, the penis will jump a little bit. And all of these micro little clues and sensations that literally don't happen with just the thrusting of intercourse and stuff like that. It is so underrated. It explains why rub and tugs even exist. And Lord bless the man who was the first guy to be so can you stroke it a little?
Oh, but it was so good, because I mean, think about it, you're giving a blowjob, or even during sex, depending on your position, you're not necessarily locked in. You're not seeing their reactions. Whereas most hand job positions, you have 10 fingers to give all the sensations. And you know what? I encourage all guys out there that see sex workers that will forever be the naysayers of they want an escort experience over massage. You are missing out, my friends, because it is a different experience. And you're right. I think you're the provider or the woman is that much more in tuned with his body to notice, his balls tightening, his feet pointing, all the things, the reactions to different things she's doing, to be okay, that worked. And every man is different. What works for one will not work for the other, and never judge a book by its cover. But it's you're putting the woman in a position of absolute control and the ability to really read into your reactions to things.
One thing mentioned his feet because I was picturing that. It was just like the toe spread. Say, or the pointing or the hyperflex. Yeah.
I'm
So
telling you,
good.
that's training.
But those are all little cues, right?
Yeah.
There are certain like physical cues when someone's like attracted to you, dilated pupils, the flush that happens kind of across your chest or your neck for some people, rosy cheeks, like all kinds of different things can happen. The same is like said when you're butt ass naked on like the cusp of orgasm
Mm-hmm.
and at the beginnings and like discovering all those sensations. And I bet if I were to tell people there are like 30 different ways to stroke a penis, and that's just with two hands, right?
Right.
They'd be like, what are you talking about 30? It's up and it's down. And I'd be like, maybe in your world, not in ours, right? And there is an art to it. There are techniques to it. It is a skill you can master. And I find we are very pro sex work as a whole, but there are differences between
Mm-hmm.
in person, online, full service, not full service. And I feel like there aren't necessarily as many full service sex workers that might have mastered the art of the hand job because their area of expertise is different. Like a dancer is a great pole dance. I don't know how to pole dance. I could
Right.
figure it out if I had to, but I don't know, right? There are certain things that I just don't know that is on the flip side when you work in a rub and tug. It's just we rub and we tug. That's what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so to master that skill means coming up with more than 30 different ways. It means
Yeah.
being creative and trying different stuff. It means aside from just the actual hand job, then you have the option to incorporate all the other things that you can still do. Do that while kissing, do that while sitting on his face, do that while sitting on his lap or grinding
Yeah.
on his chest or humping a thigh. I used to love those. Different things that come into it. You know, if he's reaching over and playing with your pussy while you're in the middle of a hand job, a really good one. I mean, who has time to wonder about when she's going to sit on it? Like,
Yeah.
there's just so many other pieces. And I, anytime we talk about hand jobs, I always think of they're the odd client that I came across in my day that I still hear from every once in a blue moon nowadays, where guys are like, oh, I only want full service. I don't need a hand job. Hand jobs are garbage. Da, da. I can't come unless you put it in your mouth. First of all, lies. Second
Right.
of all, nobody believes you. And third, give it a whirl because I promise a highly skilled hand job, like he mentioned with pros, meaning professionals, when you're a professional at giving a handy J, it is completely different than probably your last memory of a hand job when you were in like high school or college. And it was just like, you know, the dark room of a party in a closet or like at the movie theater when you were 15. Like those are very different hand jobs. Let's be
Yeah.
real. We didn't have the skills at that age. He has no stamina at that age. So yeah, they were quick and nothingness. You know what I mean? It
Right.
was a little stroke here and a tickle there and we were done. That is completely the opposite of what we do. If you're in a 90-minute erotic massage, let me tell you, there's a lot of hand job in there and
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of different hand jobs and then different positions and how it looks in the mirror, how it feels when you can't see her. If she's sitting on your face, you can't see what she's doing. She faces you away from the mirror, you now can't see a certain angle. Or we have ceiling mirrors. And if you look up, imagine how that looks. Like there's just
Mm-hmm.
so many different pieces and elements that come together that can make it so explosive and so like not just the toe curling but the shakes and the like the whole full body orgasm to it, that I'm not saying a vagina can't make you shake, but it is doing 30 different things at the
No.
same time, right? Pussies are magical and all, but they don't have fingers. They have all
No.
kinds of little sensations, pressure differences, temperature differences, wetness and lube, and all these different things are so exciting when it's just like play with my dick and you're like,
And
okay.
I think it's unmatched. Like, I don't think, you can, I think it's the best way to edge would be through a hand job, whether that's doing it to yourself or with a sex worker. But you're right. I mean, there's so many elements to it that, I mean, even combining, I'm thinking like you're using your forearms, you're using, in our case at the spa, your body, like it's all just manual stimulation that is just sensory overload. And for him to literally just, like you said, put his arms back and take in that experience is completely erotic and very, very different than just in and out sex.
Even hearing you talk about it, I'm like, ooh, Riley,
Oh God.
have some time later?
And it shouldn't
I'm free.
be basic. It should just be an up and down motion. That's boring. That's no different than you could have a full service provider that it gives lackluster service. Like there's good service providers and then there's less than. And I think a good service provider that has the ability or understands the art of a hand job can far surpass your enjoyment than even the full service.
Yeah, it's kind of unlimited, right? Like, again, there's lots of sex positions, which definitely can change certain sensations, depth, speed, all kinds of stuff like that, feeling of fullness for the woman, etc. Most quality BJ skills require a little bit of hands involved too, right?
Yeah.
So there's always that little nod. And the mouth can do lots of things. The tongue and lips can do lots of things. But not 30 something of them, not 40 of them, not whatever, right? And so I usually, when I train girls, I start with some of the basics, but usually after a couple of weeks, I have a few links that I send them that are like, here are 10 different ways. And I start there, and then I'm like, let that just be inspo, because there are umpteen more ways to do this. Just make your brain think outside the box first, and then we'll dive into even more like advanced skills and such like that, because I almost liked the challenge of the arrogance of I can't come unless I stick it in, because I'll be like, if you're going to have a session with me, this was back when I used to work, watch me, fucking watch me. And lo and behold, they come just fine. They're just full of shit trying to get some full service, which kudos, because it is an approach. I won't knock it. I'm sure it's worked for some people. I just personally thought you were full of shit when you say it, because I'm like, baloney. I've been doing this too long and I know better.
I think it comes from probably a place of most guys grow up as teenagers jerking off. So I think in their mind, it's just so deeply embedded that why do I want someone to jerk me off? I've been doing that for 25 years. So it's craving the different experiences from having a blowjob or sex. But it is very different when you get into, like he was talking about, working with a pro or someone that's just really taken the time to understand or master hand jobs. It's a very different sensation, right?